Looks like we're live.
We're live. Okay, I will call the September 24th, 2020 meeting of the 141 Portanimicut Task Force to order. We're meeting virtually on Zoom and YouTube, so behave yourselves. I am going to take attendance. So I'm Ginny Farber, Chair. I'm here. Russ Holden.
Here.
Jack Kadzik.
Here.
Suzanne Phillips.
Here.
And Kayleen Rosado.
Here.
All votes will be roll call in alphabetical order should we take them. Members of the public are currently muted. I will open the meeting to public comment after each item of new business. If there is any public with us, please identify yourselves when speaking. Welcome, everybody. It's been a long time. It's been 6 months and 2 weeks, I think, since we met. So it's nice to see you all. And we're going to use this meeting today to sort of regroup and get going again. So a little review and just bring us all up to date. So the first item of new business is review allowed and prohibited uses for the conservation property from the members list that we all submitted in the last 6 months. So yeah. John, do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ginny, and good to see everyone again. Glad you're all doing well and hanging in there. So I got probably initial emails and then I circled back, so I apologize if I hit you up twice to get a list or your thoughts from April? Oh, March. So, but I did reach out and talk to everyone. You guys have the correspondence just as background information. Some were lists, some had like other thoughts, and Phil, who's representing committee, had detailed thoughts. But the goal is try to like get a list of potential uses for the property down. So I did that. And so I kind of gleaned from all your correspondence the potential uses. I tell you, like, no one gave me a prohibited use. Someone could have thrown a softball in there, but I didn't get any. So I'm going to share my screen, show you what I did get. And what I got was, looks like about 23. So I'm just going to run them down real quick, Ginny.
Yeah, sure.
You can't read this, so I'll just speak to them. But I put them, I was going to do this matrix allowed, not allowed, but everything that anyone mentioned is allowed. There are a couple of what I'll call provisos that go along with this list. And I didn't circulate this because I just did it today, but I'll just hit those provisos as I go down the list. But everything that anyone kind of brainstormed about does seem to be allowed. So, and like the reason why we're doing these will be, we would recommend, ultimately we have to make recommendations to the Conservation Commission on the future land management of the property. So any of these, and we could rank these maybe, I don't know where this is going after today, but we might be able to rank them or drop a few out and make few priority one or whatever. So, but to start off the list, it's alphabetical. So additional off-street parking bubbled up to the top. But parking was in a few of the correspondence I got. So parking is an allowed use on the property, and the guidance we get on parking I've circulated in the past. It should be modest parking for the use and enjoyment of the conservation property. Obviously we have an adjacent town landing that that might also serve and could serve. So that was an allowed use. And the second column of this came along with some of these uses. I called it whether it's building dependent or not. So creating parking on the site is not dependent on the building at 141. aquaculture and shellfish propagation is an allowed use. I thought it was building dependent, but it may not be building dependent as I read the Shellfish and Waterways Committee's ideas. They talked about floating systems. So this is an allowed use, the propagation, and that would probably be provided that it feeds a recreational shellfishing program for residents. So tying it to the open space and recreation. Tying it to the open space and recreation kind of purchase. Beaching, a beach or beaching allowed, not building dependent. Bike racks, absolutely allowed, not building dependent. Bird watching, absolutely allowed and not building dependent. Boating instruction classes, I put allowed with a proviso. I think that would be provided that there's some type of recreational boating. Tying it to the purchase of the property for open space and recreation. And that seemed to be building dependent because they wanted to use the building for the classes, or the concept was to maybe utilize a building or even a portion of the building for the classes. So that would be perhaps a little bit tied to the building, perhaps building dependent. Coastal resiliency projects. I know you guys followed along with this, but this concept of coastal resiliency, or these environmental projects that are happening around the coastline in order to provide storm damage resiliency or storm damage prevention upland adjacent to the coast. So we have a project that's been kind of conceived for a piece of the salt marsh here. Don't know if it's going forward. It was presented to the CONSCOM as a concept. It was supported. The general, and I think you've all seen this. Ginny sent it around as information right at the beginning of the state of emergency. And CONSCOM discussed this perhaps a month into the state of emergency. And the concept was to elevate or try to elevate a section of low marsh adjacent to the landing portion of the parking lot. It's physically, the low marsh is physically on the conservation property on 141 Portanimicut Road. The concept was to work the low marsh to try to provide it an ability to grow higher and provide additional storm damage prevention to the parking lot and landing and road. And that's kind of the foundational concept behind these coastal resiliency projects. So that's a project that CONSCOM is interested in doing. It can do it on conservation land, absolutely. It's not building dependent. I don't know if it's going forward into design and permitting, but as we track it, we wanted to make sure the task force is aware of it. I think it's going to go forward with a Conservation Commission only because it's really not, I don't think, going to hinder anything the task force is going to be making recommendations on. That is the upland, the beach, the dinghy storage. The project concept was really limited to that low marsh area.
Okay.
So
John,
that's a lot about that.
is this a good time to just mention what's going on with the dredge committee, or should we wait on that?
I could touch on it briefly, but the dredge committee is obviously studying maintenance dredging in a number of existing navigational channels in Pleasant Bay. One of them is the channel into Pawa Pond. The concept behind the coastal resiliency project in building the marsh elevation is a concept that could potentially utilize some dredge spoils to build the elevation in the salt marsh. But it's in a magnitude of 4 inches. When we toured it over last month, I think, it's not a significant, the coastal resiliency project wouldn't add 2 feet of dredge spoils onto a salt marsh. It would add inches. So it will be, the conservation property likely will be a site looked at for bringing those two projects together. It would take a lot for the two projects to actually come together. And there'd be a lot of time for public comment on that, either at the conscom level or even at the dredge committee level,
Right.
even at the town meeting level, because I don't think the dredge effort is even funded yet.
And it's actually, I think it's now in the 2022 capital plan. But there's also a possibility that that 141 could be a disposal site for dredge spoils. And when we say dredge spoils, that sounds kind of scary, but it's really sand. It's just good sand. So along the beach and anyway.
Yeah. So the only thing any conscom can put on the coastal beach is compatible beach sediments, sand, coarse and fine sand. But in the concept of that salt marsh and the resiliency project, that would be more silty, fine material. But again, it's in the magnitude of, 4-inch veneer over a small piece of marsh for a test project. So I guess that's something we can continue to keep you aware of. I don't know if it's going to go forward or not. So dinghy storage, obviously it's an allowed use. It's not building dependent. I think there's a consensus among a couple of you to organize it with racks and kayak storage, which is also on this list, and those are fine. Those are allowed uses. Educational classes are definitely allowed use. They would probably be wise to have some type of conservation nexus, whether it's an environmental education on flora and fauna or coastal processes, or it could be boating or recreational type of classes, such as boating or boat safety or recreational boat safety. Recreational shellfishing was even mentioned. That's further on down the list again. Fishing is an allowed use, and that's fishing from shore, I assume. Kayak storage is an allowed use. Both of those are not building dependent. Kayaking is obviously an allowed use. Paddling is a passive recreation, absolutely allowed. Lecture rooms, allowed use, again with a proviso, provided they're conservation related. We get guidance on that from the chapter that I circulated months ago. But to the extent you're using conservation property for the public or some type of tenant or classes, or you need to have it to be conservation related. That should be building dependent. I don't know why I missed that, but I'll fix that. Picnicking, allowed use, not building dependent. Satellite Harbor Master Office, we've talked about this one. It is an allowed use, provided it is a satellite office. And obviously that would be used for the building. Scenic viewing, absolutely allowed use. Not necessarily building dependent, although a couple of concepts by more than one of you would explore a kind of an alternative or a scenario where the foundation would be capped, and that could provide a scenic platform of some sort. Shellfish propagation, an allowed use, may or may not be building dependent, as I kind of hit on before. It should be for development of seed that I think feeds the recreational program. I do think there would need to be a nexus towards recreation for propagating the shellfish. So you wouldn't want to grow out seed to be sold commercially or to a commercial grower. It would be more of a site, I think, where you could propagate shellfish for distribution for recreational harvest. Shellfishing classes were mentioned, and again, provided they're recreational shellfishing classes, absolutely. And that's something that would seem to require the building or make use of the building as it was proposed. And then storage is an allowed use for, again, recreational boating and paddling type stuff. If you want to use the building for that, in this concept, that was a building dependent concept. Swimming's allowed. Proviso there would be whether you wanted to elevate it to a bathing beach status or not. A lot of people swim from conservation properties, but only 2 are designated bathing beaches. And for those of you that don't know about that, once you designate an area for a bathing beach, then the 2 conservation areas designated are Pilgrim and Crystal Lake. Once we do that, we do seasonal water quality testing for bacteria. So we have to sign it and post results. We don't do this on Kent's Point, and some people will swim from it. We don't do it on Baker's Pond, and some people swim from it. So that's why I threw an asterisk on that one. Trail walking, obviously, we're gonna keep and probably provide emphasis to that little trail at some point when we finalize these recommendations, and provide access to that coastal beach. Absolutely allowed use, not building dependent at all. And then another observation deck. I guess I picked that up twice, where we talked about viewing platform. Again, some of you have the concept of leaving the cellar hole in place, capping it, and providing its capped deck to be some type of viewing deck or picnic space. So that was kind of my list. So if I missed anything, you can tell me now, or you can shoot me an email later. But eventually, I would envision that well, I guess the good thing is nothing is really expressly prohibited. And I think this is kind of a jumping off point, really, to focus on if you want to highlight priorities and make those recommendations to your conscom, who ultimately have to write a land management plan for the property. So that's it. I'll stop my screen sharing, but I have the list in front of me. So
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Are there comments or questions from the task force members? Suzanne, I can't see you, so you need to just jump in if you want to say something.
I understand.
Okay. So nothing on this, guys?
I think a lot of it can just happen without, like the, I don't know, like the dinghy storage, the kayak storage, because the dinghies are down there now, just kind of all spewing all over the place. So it'd be nice. I think that would be a really positive thing. I haven't seen any kayaks down there, but because most people just, put them on the roof racks and go out here, but it would probably be nice for them to have it. So I don't have to keep doing that. What I say, bike rack. So, and the kayaking and the swimming, I think that all just comes
Organically?
Yeah.
I think it should, I mean, I foresee it being a priority for you guys. I mean, if I have to remember back 6 months, a big focus, the one thing I think I got you to all agree on at one point was the coastal access. So the ability to walk the path and get to the coastal beach.
Yeah.
So, and I think we can make accommodations for hopefully proper storage or more efficient storage. We could look into that. And I know that you all agree we want to highlight that path and allow people to access the shore from the road. So absolutely, I think that's a common thread amongst all you guys when everything I've gotten and then in the past meetings as well.
Would a good next step be to have the task force members take this list and prioritize them? Prioritize the uses?
Sounds
I
good?
mean, I think you can have 4 ones, for instance. If one is, your most important, use, I think you could have bike racks, bird watching. You could have 5 ones, and then maybe a couple of 2s and a 3, and maybe something that you don't care about. But it might help us to narrow things down a little bit. I'm not seeing overwhelming enthusiasm for the idea.
No, I
Well,
think that's a good
I-
idea. I think that's a good idea to prioritize them and get them back to John or the group.
I think it'd be helpful. So like, what if we just, you went down the list and ranked it like 1 to 3, 1 to 4. You don't have to do 1 to 25, but
No, I would say 1 to 5.
okay.
1 to 5, and any numbers of 1s or 5s,
The
Yeah,
only
you have
thing, the only thing I would say, Ginny,
yes.
the only thing I'd say is most of these aren't mutually exclusive. I mean,
Right, that's why I'm saying you could have several 1s.
so you could have 25 ones.
You could. Maybe everything's important.
Okay.
Yeah. Russ, you were going to say?
No, I was going to say you have the chart as John set it up, and you have the column for building inclusive, et cetera, and then the column we could put the scores on, the 1 through 5.
Mhm.
I think what we're looking at is the main thing is, are we going to keep the building or get rid of the building? And that's where the score is going to help us determine the value of the building.
Right, and what we might be able to do after that, I'm just brainstorming at this point, but for instance, what would we need to do that? So dinghy storage, we would need a designated place to store the dinghies and maybe get them up off the ground or have them be seasonal or whatever. I mean, Russ, in your fabulous alternatives analysis, you thank you for doing that. You talked about moving dinghy storage and having it in one area where it was off the beach and out of the marsh, which is really important. But what do we need to do? Well, we probably don't need to make much of an investment. It's just a matter of designating the spot and getting people to comply. Shellfish propagation, what do we need? So maybe once we prioritize, we could then look and see what's going to cost us money, what's going to, where do we want to put the resources, and start to just hone things down that way.
That's a good idea. You'd have the cost factor, and then you'd have the labor, so as to speak.
Yeah, and long-term maintenance. Yeah,
Maintenance, et cetera.
yeah. What would it take to keep this going?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you guys are okay with that,
I'll circulate the list today. I mean,
that'd be great.
and then I guess everyone could bounce it back to me, and then we can share it the next time we get together.
And maybe could you put in another column for the ranking?
Yeah, no problem.
And if anybody brainstorms needs and wants to make notes, that would be great too. It may be premature, but
Sure.
okay. Okay, so do we have any members of the public on, John?
No, just us.
Okay. All right, it's just us today. All right, review current property conditions.
I have just a bit of an update. I mean, obviously, the property is as we left it. Water's off, electric's off. Went through there yesterday. The one update I have is that the state of emergency drained a lot of municipal resources. So the money that was in the facilities account and was available for building removal effort is no longer there.
Okay.
And I did discuss this with the town administrator, and I don't know what the fate of the building is. I don't know what this group will be recommending to Conscom for the fate of the building. But if and when we get that far, we need to, the commission, probably, the Conservation Commission probably needs to send a letter over to Mr. Kelly. That was the advice I got, because if in fact this group does recommend anything to do with demolition of the building, you would want to make your Conservation Commission aware so they can ask the town administrator to put the money aside again, because a lot of that was used to make up for shortfalls with the state of emergency.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's just a brief update for you guys. It was there and now it's not, but it sounds like we could get it back. We have to make sure he knows that that in fact we need it. So at some point,
Yeah, that's where we thought we were when we convened, was that we would need to get a warrant item in.
we're not going to do a
And-
warrant because we're going to
Because,
utilize the existing facilities
right,
budget,
right.
which apparently we can still do, but at some point, someone will need to make the request. That someone would need to be your Conservation Commission, of course, at your recommendation.
Right. Okay. Task force members, any comments, questions?
No, I just wonder about the cost of, and I know that the cost to take it down would be a lot, but if we keep it up, I think there's going to be an ongoing cost on a regular basis, and where is that money going to come from? And if we
Well,
have classes, who's, are we staffing this, who's being paid?
Right.
Things like that.
Right. So Russ, I think in the minutes from our last meeting, you found that the removal costs would be, since it just came up, around $15,000 for removal and another $8,000 for possible regrading and loam and seeding. Is that,
Yes,
that's right? Okay.
that's correct.
Okay. So yes, that's clearly going to be one of the things that that we need to take into consideration, and one of the things that the Conservation Commission is going to ask about.
John, can I go back to what you were just saying about basically a bond for the removal of the dwelling? You're saying that we need to get the money back. We've lost the money for whatever reason, but we need to apply for it again, or just make note to powers to be that we want that money in escrow?
Yeah, so the facilities department has a budget much like the conservation department, and within it there was sufficient funds planned for and held for the removal of this building, even though we actually haven't made a decision on that yet, whether it's to be removed or not. But there was sufficient funds being held there. During the state of emergency, all departments had to turn back it's like 15% of the FY20 budget. So that money got taken away to make up for shortfalls elsewhere by the selectman and the administrator. And I know they're still experiencing shortfalls with the meals tax and all that stuff. So we have to make the need known, Russ, is what the commission would need to do, so that the budget needs were well known and can be accommodated. Obviously, we have we're in FY21, right? I always get that wrong.
I think so.
Thanks to our outside town meeting held this summer. So we just need to make the need known as soon as we know the need. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The needs are many, the money is not. Is that another way to put it? We have to make our needs known.
Can we make it known that we want that money held, or is it?
Well, I think once you guys as a group make a decision on the building, I think if we are still meeting as a task force, perhaps that decision could bubble up independently so the Conservation Commission can write the town administrator on the need. But I don't
So we
want to
don't have,
make presumptions about the need until you guys vote it.
okay.
But that's something that as soon as I hear you guys make a decision, whether it's unanimous or not, if it's a majority decision, I would probably recommend you push that and let your commission know so they can direct our office to write and request the funds.
So we don't have to worry about losing that money then?
It's already gone.
Permanently. I mean, we can.
It's like we have to get back in line, I guess is how I'm looking at
Okay,
it.
all right.
Anything else on current conditions?
I think through Nate's office, we let everyone know that, hey, it's town property, and I think because Kay's on it and is in the neighborhood, I know it was utilized for parking. I don't know as if it provided any really relief to the circulation of the landing or to the neighbors. But when I did go down there through the summer, and maybe Phil was down there as well, there was usually people utilizing the driveway for parking, and sometimes boat and trailer parking. But and I don't know if it provided relief, but it is being used. So so that's been going on. That kind of still goes on.
So sometime during the last 2 weeks, it wasn't last night's select board meeting. I think it was the week before. They were talking about increasing fees and potentially having residents parking stickers. And so Chief McDonald reiterated what he talked to us about in May, that he called out 141 as a problem, that people have been leaving. I don't know that this is, it sounds really dramatic, that people were leaving their trailers just in the middle of the road. And that that parking at that landing continues to be a problem. So when we think about parking, and we think about, and I seriously think when we think about uses, one of the issues is, can we accommodate more people, number one, and number two, how do we handle the parking on, if that's going to happen on our piece of property? Does that require a town sticker as well? So just because it's going to be complicated. So that hasn't gotten better.
Yeah, Ginny, that's a good point. Everyone's going to rank the list, and I'm sure parking will be pretty high on most people's list. But yeah, you can make recommendations on whether you feel it should be restricted to residents only. I do believe that Conscom has the latitude. There was no state funds accepted for the purchase of the property. It was purchased with local receipts from the community preservation tax. So I think that can be something that you consider to recommend. Ginny, you're correct. The chief, and I'm well aware of it, the chief, slowly through last town meeting and maybe an upcoming town meeting, they're starting to put together a structure where they could provide some parking enforcement at municipal facilities. So that might be the landing, but it also could be conservation areas, provided that we want restrictions and enforcement of those restrictions. Currently there are none.
It would be hard, I think, to have two different sets of rules, but my understanding was that we were going to have a warrant item that included a parking enforcement officer. But
I think that's right.
So sooner rather than later. But again, that's one of those things that we need to think about. How's this going to work?
It's funny, and maybe Kay can offer some perspective, but this is a landing that really is this is one that's used by the residents. It might be heavily used, but I'm not so sure it's heavily used from out of town like River Road is over my shoulder, but I think this is a lot of residents using this particular landing. And that's, of course, not our parcel, that's the adjacent parcel, but
right.
it puts stress on the conservation property.
And totally off the topic, I was watching another earlier select board meeting where an applicant for a committee position started talking about how he wanted more parking on Portanimicut because his plan was to use his boat to take charter customers over to Simpson Island.
Hmm.
So, which isn't going to happen because we don't allow that.
Good.
But you know, business opportunities, that we need more parking for business opportunity. Anyway, that's off the topic.
No, there is,
John,
it is mostly residents, but in the summer there are several out-of-state plates, usually parked on the wrong side of the road, in the road. I have a couple of pictures of Pennsylvania one and New York one, not one tire off the road and on the wrong side, and right between two no parking signs. So we're seeing a little bit of that, but it is mostly it's a lot of the fishermen, and that's their livelihood, and they, you know, they need access.
Right. Suzanne, did I
Yeah,
hear
John,
you say something?
I have a question for John. John,
Okay.
with regard to the parking, on your chart, you show, what, 4 spaces? Is that parallel to the road, or are you talking about, there's currently parking sort of in front of that garage?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that is probably next level site planning, and we could do a little bit of that as a group, perhaps. And I kind of was making some notes because it just came up in the context of the dinghy storage. So maybe after we rank the potential uses, if you want to look at the site plan, even do a site visit, you know, where would you want to best recommend dinghy storage?
Okay.
Environmentally, I mean, you can make some obvious recommendations. You probably want to do that on a coastal beach and not within the marsh, and probably want to have some consideration how people are going to circulate on the property. You could do the same with parking. So after you rank the uses, if the building's going to stay, if the building's going to go, you might accommodate parking differently. If you wanted to accommodate parking for the conservation parcel, but not necessarily exclude, you know, landing support. Maybe it's kind of a shoulder improve type situation versus carving out a lot where it's more traditionally designed for passenger vehicles, I'll call them.
Okay.
So we could talk more about that, I guess. We probably should. And then I think we'll leave the site planning up to whomever we get to do the site design. But your recommendations are going to drive that design, so do keep that in mind. So but maybe we should do a little follow-up on site as a group.
I think that would be a good idea. It's been a while. Is there anything else on this topic? Okay. And then we have discuss land management plan recommendations, which we sort of segued into, to be made to Conscom, discuss drafting / outline, which, you know, I told John that my intention in this 6 months of semi downtime was to actually write the preamble, but I haven't. So maybe next week. But I think we've done a fairly good job of discussing next steps and recommendations. Now, I mean, we do, I guess, need to talk about prohibited uses, which we've done a little bit.
I didn't really see anyone, like none of you mentioned any, you know, I was waiting for something silly, but I didn't really get any.
No, I mean, what I meant was in the land management plan, there
Oh.
will be a list of prohibited uses. Fires, firecrackers.
Yeah, I think, and I know I've circulated it a long time ago.
Yes.
I mean, that list is usually pretty typical and is on one of our 2 trailhead signs at most of the areas that are publicly visited. So, I mean, that'd be an easy recommendation, and to be consistent with the other properties.
And I think a lot of the land management's going to fall in place once we've gone through the checklist, the
Yes.
1 through 5. Because we'll determine how we want to use the land from that. And then, as John said, there's a list of what you don't allow.
Right.
It's
And some of it's
pretty generic.
boilerplate.
Yeah,
So the preamble, the history of the purchase and that sort of thing. Do I want to make a commitment to get that done?
I've heard a lot about the history anecdotally. I don't have a good basis to write that up, but that is the piece that would need a little bit of work, and that would be a fun piece to work out and present to the conscom.
Well, it would seem like Kayleen might know something about that.
I have some file history.
And then Jeff Norjo. Yes?
I heard a little from Jeff, a little bit about an upweller that was there at one point before the home, long time ago. Kay, do you remember that at all?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if Sandy had her shellfish lab there briefly before the home was built in the 70s.
Yeah, and I think that went across the pond.
Yeah. So I've been picking up pieces of history that
Yeah.
would be fun to try to put together. It's not a total requirement for a land management plan, but I don't know
Yeah.
who's good with that stuff. But
And Ginny, I could send you some names of people that would really know what the history of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember Jeff talking about actually growing up back there.
Yeah, he'll be a wealth of information.
Yeah.
Raisha Heilman
Ratio, yeah.
will know everything.
It'd be nice to have the history, but just the particulars of the purchase and all that. I mean, that's just a matter of pulling it together.
yeah, that I can easily pull together, and then, but the narrative history write-up is really, just for put into context, kind of a half page usually that leads every land management plan. It's a legacy piece really that we would leave behind, so people understand what we know, and it could then go easily into the acquisition history that we have here. So I can try to put some of that together. At least I have a file history that kind of shows the elements of single family home construction and stuff like that. But I don't know, before then is kind of when I was hearing interesting stories.
I think.
I don't know how to verify them. Like, are they true? Like, I don't want to just write it up and that someone.
What'd you hear?
No, just the shellfish lab thing. That was news to me. I didn't know that.
I think there's a reference to the Portanimicut area in the Simpson Island land management plan in their history, but something about a sachem and but I don't remember. I can look that up too.
You know who else? The Historic Commission. I know that they, because a couple of years ago we went in there about the Native Americans and how it was all named, and the chief and how he drowned and all that. There used to be a big plaque, not a plaque, like a sign. I actually have a picture of it I should send to you all.
Oh yeah, that would be great. That would be super. Yeah, that'd be absolutely fabulous. Hold on, my timer's going off. 1 second.
Uh-oh.
Is that my pepperoni?
What's for dinner?
Oh, I made like 12 gallons of soup today. Chicken soup. It's winter's coming. Anyway, so so we can start to work on that, pull those pieces together separately from making any decisions. And then we need to set a fall schedule of meetings. And we've been meeting the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. But that gets us into Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I wondered if we could stay with October 8th and 12th, and then switch to November 5th and 19th, which is the 1st and 3rd. Would that work?
Yep.
The 8th and 22nd?
8th and 22nd of October. And then because we start to get into holidays, I wondered if we could switch to the 5th and the 19th of November. I didn't talk to you about this, John, because I just looked at the calendar a few
That's
minutes.
fine.
And then the 3rd and 17th. And hopefully we'll be done by then, but
Ginny?
yes, Suzanne.
Yes, or otherwise known as Phil.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at your name. It
When you
says-
first said it, you said 2nd and 3rd Tuesdays, but you've been naming Thursdays. And
Did I say?
I just want to say Tuesdays are not good
These
for
are-
me. The Thursdays are like we were doing.
Okay,
Thank you.
these are Thursdays. So if I misspoke, I'm sorry. So the 8th and the 22nd of October are both Thursdays. November 5th and 19th are also Thursdays. And then December 3rd and 17th are Thursdays. Oh, Phil, thank you. John, did you change Phil's name?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I won't call her Suzanne. So if that's okay and it works with the town clerk and the
Yeah,
IT.
I think it's good. Yeah, no, I think we're good.
Okay.
I mean, there's a conflict here at, I think it's like 5:30 or 6, so, but I think we usually make that anyways.
Yeah.
I think we used to lose Kay at 5:30, I thought, but,
Not anymore.
yeah. So yeah, I think that's fine.
And then we have no old business because we're just rolling along. And so then the last thing we have is the review of the minutes from 3/12/20. And they look good to me. So if no one else has revisions, I would take a motion to approve.
I so move.
Okay. Motion by Russ and second by,
Aye.
I'll second if nobody did.
Kayleen jumped in. Thank you, Phil. And so Ginny Farber, aye. Jack,
That guy,
Russ,
Aye.
Phil.
Phil seconded it, so.
Aye.
Aye, and Kayleen. So that's 5-0-0. Does anyone have anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
But before you do that, so
Yeah.
when I send I'll send the list out. Please it'll just be Excel. Everyone I think is comfortable with that. If you're not, call me. And we could do it together if that's helpful. And then if you want to add stuff, you can, and you send it back and I'll make an amalgamation and circulate that in advance of the next meeting. And then
So
we can,
is 1 high priority and 5 low, or is it the
Yes.
other way around?
I'll
Yeah.
put some instructions on there. Yeah, we're gonna go with one will be number one,
One is
highest
yours.
priority. But I'll put a little instruction on the bottom of it and send it around. And it'll probably be at this hour, probably be tomorrow.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing two different things. I think I'm hearing we're gonna get the whole list and then we're rating it 1 to 5, or are we listing our priorities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You're gonna get the Excel sheet. It's gonna have another column on it. That's
So,
where,
yeah,
And we're
so
rating it.
like
We're
parking, is parking a 1 for you or is it a 5?
Gotcha.
Or it might be a 2 or 3.
Okay.
and my feeling is, feel free to make editorial comments,
Okay.
you know, on a separate sheet, or is there room on the Excel sheet for,
Yeah, totally. And as you
Comments?
said, because I'll combine them all. And I think to Russ's point, that'll really start to drive. I mean, this will be the meat of your recommendations coming out of this group in your final report on how to use the property going forward to the commission. So the ranking will show a clear score of how these are all valued.
yeah, hopefully.
And that was a good, thank you, Russ, for that tip. This will put value to these uses.
That's good. That's great.
The lowest will be the best once you add them up, but that'll work too.
Not when you add, well, maybe.
Everyone scores parking number 1, then it's a 5.
Right,
It's
Everybody
Yeah,
hates
but-
on kayaks, they might be a 20.
right.
going to be like
Yeah.
ranked voting. We'll get
Hey,
rid
I'm
of the
hoping you
long
don't teach
stories and
math.
Try it over again.
Who are you saying that to?
The teacher in the group.
Well, but I teach math.
Oh, that's right, you did teach math. I should have known better. Okay, well, that'd be good. That'd be good exercise. We'll do that before the meeting and I'll circulate before the 8th.
Okay, that's
All right.
great. Anything else? Thank you for getting together
Does
with us.
this work for everyone? Phil, you feeling looped in here, Phil? You were able to function? No problems?
I don't have a computer and this is the first Zoom meeting.
I think
And
you're doing great.
I'm watching this on a so-called smartphone, and some of my not talking was, flipping the screen back and forth and trying to figure out where to punch buttons and stuff like that. But yeah, I did it.
That's good.
So it can only get better, right?
Yep, yep,
Well,
yep.
welcome to the weird club.
Yeah, I mean, last week, I will just say this, that on our Conservation Commission meeting was a completely different format, and I had trouble with it. But, okay, so could I get a motion to adjourn? Anybody?
So move.
Okay,
Second.
Russ, second?
Second?
Second,
I'm gonna give it to Phil.
thank you.
You're welcome. And all those in favor, Ginny, aye, Jack,
Jack, aye.
Russ,
Aye.
Phil,
Phil, aye.
and Kayleen.
Bye.
500. We're out of here. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Guys, nice to see you all.
You too.